The discipline of suffering, of great suffering. Do you not know that only this discipline has created all enhancements of man so far? Suffering is an inescapable aspect of human existence, an integral element of human condition. The origins of suffering are diverse, and some even say that suffering, rather than its alternative joy and happiness, is the more common human experience. Men are wretched by necessity, and determined to believe themselves wretched by accident. Considering that suffering is an inevitable part of life, the question is, how shall we confront suffering? Will we allow it to erode us and plunge us into despair, or can our suffering serve as a catalyst to elevate us toward a more meaningful existence? In this video, we delve into the latent worth inherent in the ordeal of suffering and contend that many individuals approach it in a manner contrary to the essence of life. All good in a man for which he is praised or loved, wrote Hermann Hesse, is merely good suffering, the right kind, the living kind of suffering, a suffering to the full. From suffering springs health, from suffering springs strength. At an initial glance, suffering might indeed seem like one of life's adversities. It frequently emerges alongside the unfortunate events of illness, injury, failure, loss, or rejection. Suffering is an agonizing ordeal marked by a barrage of negative emotions, often resulting in a sense of isolation from our social circle. Given these inherent negatives, one might naturally question the worth of an experience so steeped in hardship. What could Nietzsche have found in suffering that compelled him to express in his writings that it almost determines the order of rank, how profoundly human beings can suffer? Profound suffering makes noble. It separates. In Ian McGilchrist's monumental work, The Matter with Things, he expounds upon significance of suffering through a comparison between humans and trees. During the late 1980s, scientists engaged in a Biosphere 2 project and constructed a closed ecological system with objective of investigating feasibility of sustaining life on another celestial body. As McGilchrist states, scientists involved in the Biosphere 2 project were puzzled by the fact that trees within the project repeatedly failed to achieve maturity before they fell over. Later they realized that trees needed wind in order to grow strong. Exposure to the wind causes the growth of stress wood, which is the core of trees' strength and integrity. Wind also causes the root system to strengthen. Much like a tree, when an individual is situated in a sheltered environment shielded from life's challenges, they tend to develop vulnerability and frailty. Hardship, adversity, and the suffering that accompanies these experiences are essential for robust development. Nietzsche had already acknowledged this truth concerning both trees and people well before the inception of Biosphere 2 project. Examine the lives of best and most fruitful people and ask yourself whether a tree that is supposed to grow to a proud height can dispense with bad weather and storms, whether misfortunes and eternal resistance do not belong among the favorable conditions without which any great growth, even of virtue, is scarcely possible. The significance of suffering extends beyond its role as an inevitable byproduct of the trials that foster personal development. Indeed, there are intrinsic value inherent in the experience of suffering. Firstly, suffering serves as a profound teacher, echoing Nietzsche's sentiment that great suffering is the ultimate liberator of the mind. It has the power to illuminate errors in our paths and underscore the necessity for a change. Suffering also plays an important role in nurturing empathy, as it is through our own suffering that we gain insight into trials others face during challenging times. Additionally, it is well established that certain forms of suffering, particularly depression, enhance our ability to realistically assess life. As noted by McGilchrist, depression has been repeatedly shown to be associated with greater realism, provided the depression is not too severe. The evidence is that this is not because insight makes you depressed, but because up to a point, being depressed gives you insight in understanding one's role in the beginning about a certain outcome Depressives are more in touch with reality even than normal subjects. Suffering, however, serves a purpose beyond that of a teacher. It amplifies our capacity to derive pleasure from life. Suffering resides at the one end of a dualistic spectrum, where its opposite poles are occupied by happiness and joy. Just as all pairs of opposites necessitate each other's existence, an individual's comprehension of joy is intertwined with their understanding of the pain that suffering entails. The greater our capacity to endure one type of experience, the greater our capacity to embrace the other. Or as Nietzsche put it, how little you know of human happiness, you comfortable and benevolent people, for happiness and unhappiness are sisters and evil twins that either grow up together or, as in your case, remain small together. Also, McGilchrist explains, opposites are not to be resolved by eliminating the one we happen to dislike, any more than looping off the south end of a bar magnet gets rid of the south pole, it just shortens the magnet. However, if we consider that numerous challenges and hardships, despite causing pain, can actually foster personal growth, enhance realism, and deepen self-understanding, and that they are integral to the full appreciation of joy and happiness, it raises the question, why does suffering often lead many individuals into enduring states of chronic depression, bitterness, pessimism, nihilism, and hopelessness? In simple terms, the reason may lie in our increasing dependence on the luxuries of modern civilization. Most individuals today are unfamiliar with the art of enduring hardship, with ready access to the life's essentials, surrounded by sources of pleasure and comfort, and with illness and death typically concealed within hospitals. We have shielded ourselves from the physical and emotional suffering that characterized earlier eras. Consequently, our minds and bodies have grown less resilient and unprepared to confront the inevitable trials of life. The luxuries offered by modern civilization have heightened our awareness of pain and suffering to such an extent that some individuals regard the very concept of suffering as a profound critique of entirety of existence. As articulated by Nietzsche, pain did not hurt as much then as it does now. A pain is now hated much more than was the case for the earlier humans. One speaks much worse of it. Due to our excessive sensitivity to suffering, when it does surface, many of us opt to evade it. We seek refuge in substances like drugs or alcohol, or become engaged in the mesmerizing glow of screens as a means of distraction. If these strategies prove ineffective, there is the option of psychotropic medication to numb our pains. However, in our constant effort to elude, deny, or conceal our suffering, we overlook the opportunity to extract its inherent value. The true worth of suffering is only realized by those willing to endure it and confront it directly. As Nietzsche says, if you are unwilling to endure your own suffering even for an hour, and continually forestall all possible misfortunes, if you regard suffering and pain generally as evil, as detestable, as deserving of annihilation, and as a blot on existence, well, you have then in your heart the religion of smug ease. Nevertheless, it's essential to recognize that lingering in chronic suffering is unwise, as it can have adverse consequences on our physical and mental health. Rather than getting stuck in a perpetual state of suffering, once we have extracted lessons from it, suffering should serve as a force that generates tension, compelling us towards progress and personal growth, acting as a one pole in a dynamic process. It is the tension between the varying ends of the bow that gives the arrow the power to fly, as it is the tension in the strings of lyre that gives rise to melody. This is what is meant by the saying, "War is the father of all things." Some may question whether the principles discussed earlier also pertain to profound suffering, suffering that emanates from tragic loss, ongoing illness, existential confrontation with mortality, encounters with mental instability, or personal downfall. Nietzsche, who personally experienced such intense suffering, affirmed that even this kind of suffering possesses significant value. At every age of my life, suffering, monstrous suffering, was my lot. Nietzsche experienced a range of hardships, including personal rejection, a lack of acknowledgement in his career, and most significantly, chronic health problems, for which he could not discover a cure. In one of his personal letters, he possibly conveyed his sentiments regarding these difficulties. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I spend about 36 hours in bed, in real torment. This winter is worst there has been. It is such a strain getting through the day that by evening there is no pleasure left in life, and I am really surprised how difficult living is. It does not seem to be worth it, all this torment. The same individual who penned this sentiment also asserted that it was his own suffering that acted as a driving force behind his philosophical achievements. His suffering not only contributed to his status as a renowned philosopher, but also enabled him to attain a state of being where even tragedy lost its inherently tragic quality. Therefore, when confronted with profound suffering, we can turn to figures like Nietzsche for motivation. Nietzsche serves as a living proof that with courage and positive mindset, it is conceivable to endure life's most harrowing ordeals and emerge with a richer character, deeper wisdom, and enhanced ability to experience joy.